presentation on? And I said, no, not really. But I said, I've had great success over the past year filling out my collection of big old HP desktops. I could bring one for people to play with. What one should I bring? 9800, 9810, 9820, 9825, 9825T, 9835. And he said, do you have an 85? And I said, yeah. He said, bring that. No, I didn't consider that particularly interesting. I mean, yeah, it is, but the ones that are really hard to find and obscure are the ones that are more interesting, and 85s are still pretty widely available. But he said, bring that, and so I did, and I brought it in manual, and you've seen it back there at the table with the cover off so you guys can play with it. And then Friday evening, Gene says, could you do a presentation of this? Because we have some time we need to fill. And I was going, and he said, great, I'll pencil you in. So a lot of you yesterday may have noticed that I seem to be ignoring your presentations. This was not, me being rude. It was me working in PowerPoint trying to get my presentation going. So this is probably not as complete and polished as it should be, but I'll do what I can.
We really don't care.
That's nice. Okay.
You run 1,000.
Yeah, there we go. So I didn't know I was giving the presentation until Friday. Gene, as most of you know, is always the one who manages to browbeat you into doing these. And so I've been throwing this together. I've been frantically searching Google Images to find pictures, and anyway, here we go. This machine was introduced in 1979, just a couple of years after the Apple II, and it was part of a family that included the 83, the 86, the 87, and the very bizarre 9915. It's a custom 8-bit CPU clocked at 0.625 megahertz, or 625 kilohertz as we used to say. Now this is a little odd because, as you may recall, back in the early 70s we had the 9825 series of calculators, and those were a custom 16-bit CPU. But possibly for cost reasons, this guy cost, I think, $32.95 when it came out. The CPU is very strange, and unfortunately I didn't have time to do a lot of slides on the CPU, but I'll tell you what little I know about it. It came with 16K of memory, and as with most 8-bit systems back in the day, they were like the 6502. It was kind of a hybrid. You've got 8-bit data, 16-bit address, and so it had 64K of address space. Came with 16K, but it could only use 32K for programs. If you had more than 32K, you had to have a special eDisk ROM to use it as an electronic disk. The display is a little 5-inch monochrome CRT, 32 characters, 16 lines. What's nice is 64 character ring buffer. That should be 64 line ring buffer. So you could always scroll back through 4 screens of data, which was very cool. And it had a full screen editor. So if you were using something like an Apple II and you typed in this long, complicated basic line and hit return and it went beep syntax error, you had no option other than to type the entire line in again. Whereas if you had an 85, you could just move the cursor up to the error, correct it, hit return, you're good to go. That was really cool. Full 256 character set, 128 in the keyboard, and the rest of them you can use CHR $, I think, to invoke them. When you first turn it on, unshifted characters produce capitals, and there's a flip command to make it work like a real keyboard. Now the commands to the computer are case insensitive. You can type all of your basic commands and things, uppercase, lowercase, mixed case, it doesn't care. File names are case sensitive, which is a little strange, but there you go. Graphics, we have 256, about 192 pixels, monochrome, 1 bit per pixel. There's a separate graphics buffer, so you can flip between text and graphics. Unlike some of the later machines, like the, say, 9826, you cannot overlay them directly, but you can print text on the graphics buffer, although it's not very fast because it's drawing it dot by dot. Very primitive graphics by today's standards. You could basically do 3 things. You can move the pen to any point. You can drop, it's like a plotter. You can drop the pen and move it to another point and it'll draw a line. There's a primitive command to draw axes. You can tell it you want an x-axis and a y-axis and I want tick mark, and bam, through there. You have character graphics. Basically, you can print text on the screen vertically or horizontally. And they have a bplot command, which some of you may have remembered from computers back in the 70s. Basically, it was kind of like a programmable character generator. You could come out with any arbitrary shape, look at the bits, divide them into chunks of 8, and basically do CHR string that into an array, and then B-plot that character array, and then you can draw, arbitrarily complex graphics within the resolution limits of the machine. And you could save and restore the entire graphics buffer. So if you wanted to generate a bunch of plots, you can generate a plot, save it, generate a plot, save it, generate a plot, save it, and then read them and display them. We have an 8-bit multiplexed data address bus. And so like in the 6502, you'd have 24 pins. You'd have 8 data pins, 16 address pins. On this guy, you've got 8 pins. And they're used for everything. That's probably one of the reasons why it is so freaking slow. They had some cool stuff in there. It's auto-incrementing address logic. So if you are reading or writing to memory sequentially, you only need to specify the first address. And after that, the machine goes ahead and increments the pointer for you, which is nice. Probably the nicest thing about the machine is this tape drive. Now, when I looked this up, I realized that like next year, I could do an entire hour-long presentation just on the tape drive. It is that cool. Did somebody, yeah, that'd be fascinating.
Slow down. I remember slowing down the more programs you had.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about it next year on the Friday before the conference.
Gotcha. The tape drive, the actual tape format, the DC-100 tapes and DC-300 tapes were invented in the early 70s. And prior to that, if any of you have any of the old calculators, like say a 9830, you know they used audio tapes. And audio tapes really, really suck for data storage. They are horribly slow because they are capstan driven, at least on the old machines. The clocking on the data on the tape varies depending on where you are on the tape. And so this was invented to get around all that. It's driven by a single puck. It's kind of hard to describe. There's a filament that wraps around the tape spools is driven by that puck, and you can get an absolutely constant tape speed, and the filament keeps the tape wound tightly on either spool. So that works out very well. Now the only problem is that the old 3M DC-100 tapes are all now pretty much dead. Even if you find one brand new in the wrapper, it's probably not going to work. Oxide will be peeling off. Fortunately, this isn't a DC-100 tape. A DC-100 tape is about 2/3 the thickness. This is a QIC tape, 1/4-inch cartridge. The DC-100 tape used 0.15-inch tape, just like an audio cassette. The 1/4-inch cartridges use 0.25-inch tape. It turns out, by making the cartridge thicker, you actually make it significantly more physically robust and reliable, and for whatever reason, the tape lasts a lot longer. And so I have had all of my tape-driven HP machines modified to accept 1/4-inch tapes. You can also, 1/4-inch tapes are a lot easier to find than DC-100 tapes. You can see on the screen there's that tiny URL that will take you to a fascinating retrospective of this tape drive, and this is probably the only audience in the world that will find it fascinating.
You're welcome.
Yes.
What's the nature of the mod that needs to be done?
It's actually fairly simple. If you look inside the tape drive, there's a vertical aluminum post with the typical rubber drive wheel on it. And there's a guy named Larry Atherton that will CNC machine a new drive post that positions that wheel a little higher and makes the wheel a little thicker. And then sometimes you need to carve the mounting point. There's a plastic frame the tape slides into, there's slots in the sides to position it, and that needs to be tweaked slightly. The nice thing is, it is still backwards compatible with DC-100 tapes. So if you have any of these old HP machines that use these tapes, I highly recommend sending them to Larry and letting him modify your tape drive. And when he does that, he'll send you back a few good tapes, and that's always convenient.
Will he replace the rubber part?
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah, it's a complete refurbishment.
Good.
And so the head will be cleaned and aligned, the drive wheel will be replaced, you'll get the new thing, and then he'll put a tape in, a test tape, put it in his oscilloscope, tweak everything to where you're getting very good signal quality. Yes?
How did you ever find this out?
How did I ever find out about Larry?
No, about the modification.
Boy, I'm trying to remember. It's been a long time. About 20 years ago, I bought a 9825, which is it's a big, low, flat machine with a single-line LED display, and it has a DC-100 tape cartridge. And mine had the GUI wheel, and so I took it apart, and I had never done a GUI wheel thing before, so I just put heat shrink tubing around the bare metal thing, and that actually worked for quite a while, but it's noisy. And somewhere online, I stumbled across this, and I said, oh, that'd be good. So what the heck, I took the 9825 apart, sent him the drive, got it back in a couple of weeks, and it was just smooth and flat and whizzy, and I got a couple of tapes. And he still does this stuff. I can give anybody who's interested contact information. Moving onwards, expansion in the back of the unit, back here, are 4 slots. I don't know anything about the pinouts, they're probably 8-pin slots. What can you put in those slots? Well, first thing you can put in is a ROM drawer. ROM drawer looks like this. And the way this works is each drawer holds 6 ROMs. These ROMs are like this. And they snap readily into place unless you're trying to demonstrate it.
Do ROMs need
There
to
we
be
go.
in certain slots?
Each one holds 6 ROMs, and then you can have as many of these ROM drawers as you want. Now, one thing's interesting, it's not immediately obvious, but the printing in my ROMs is in silver. The printing on the ROMs in that photo are in gold. And that's because in the HP-85 family, there were really 4 main members. There was the 83, the 85, and they're over in one corner of the room. The 86 and the 87 over in another corner of the room. They have a different CPU. I don't know what, they don't have a different CPU.
Just different ROMs, different memory management.
Different ROMs, different memory management. What it boils down to is the ROMs are not compatible between the families. So basic syntax is, but if you save a program on one of the machines and load it on the other in binary form, it is not going to work. Can't get anything past this group. Another thing you can put in, of course, is an HPIB interface, and that connects to floppy drives, of which I do have, but you didn't tell me to bring it, so I didn't. Then you have memory modules, 16K. So you could put 3 more of those in this machine, but again, anything past 32K is going to be an electronic disk, and you need a ROM for the electronic disk, which I actually don't have, so I'm not going to do that.
Ask me later.
Anyway, ask him later. Other family members. This is an HP misstep. The 83 is an 85 with no printer and no tape drive, but notice that they left the drawer on the top of the machine where you put your printer paper in, just to remind you of how cheap you were. And obviously with no mass storage, there was no way to save your programs. So the only thing you could do is buy an HPIB interface and a floppy drive, which cost a lot more than the difference between an 83 and an 85. People figured this out really quickly, and the 83 is so rare, I have never seen one, and I've never heard of one being offered for sale. So I don't know why you'd want it, except it's extremely rare and fairly useless. Yes.
Back in the 85, I believe it's the 85B, you cannot use that 16K RAM drawer.
You're correct.
And a lot of 85Bs that you'll find have them. So if you get one, take it out.
Gotcha. The 85B is a variant of the 85A. This is an 85A. The 85B had 64K of memory built in, so it would ignore, as he pointed out, any memory cartridge you put in it. And it also had some built-in ROMs. It had the eDisk ROM and I forget which ones exactly, I think I mentioned it here. Oddly enough, it did not have the built-in HPIB, which would have been useful. Oh, I've got it right here, built-in mass storage, eDisk, and I/O ROMs, but no HPIB. 32K for programs, 32K was a volatile, I might mention, electronic disk. The 86 is an 85 with no printer, no display, and no tape drive, but it did have a built-in HPIB interface, and you just put a composite monitor exactly like you put on your Apple II, set it on top, and the advantage here is you got a bigger screen. I think it was an 80 by 25, I'm not really sure.
It also had a Centronics type connector for a different type of floppy drive.
Didn't know that.
On the 86B.
Oh, there was an 86B. You see, what a great audience.
We'll help you with yours though.
Thank you, yes. 87, I do have one of these. It had a wider display, but that crowded out the tape drive and the printer. Did have an HPIB interface though. And as I've been informed here by Eric, when I say the CPU is different on this machine and it can't run 85 programs, that is technically not correct. It's the same CPU, but it still can't run 85 programs. What's a little weird about this is you'd think with the wide CRT you'd get more graphics. Nope. Still 256 by I think 192, centered, and so you've got blank areas on either side. The only thing you can use that wide screen for is longer lines. And honestly, if you're programming the thing for fun or profit, I don't find it to be that big a deal. And then you've got the clumsiness of having to have external printing. And the last member of the family is this little puppy, 9915. Have no idea really what it was intended to be used for. I've seen one, and I was basically,
Industrial controls.
yeah, I kind of knew that, but
Recognized.
it's not a standard rack mount form factor.
Isn't it a half size rack mount?
It's
It's an HP standard for mounting multiple things side by side in a rack.
Did everybody hear that? Eric tells me it is an HP standard for mounting multiple things. So it's, I guess it's some reasonable multiple of 19 inches wide or something. Okay, you can see about how big it is from the tape drive. And those 4 buttons to the left are just buttons that you could read to see if they were pressed. And as best I can tell, I couldn't find a whole lot of information on it, and maybe I should, one guy offered to basically give one to me, and I was going, what would I do with it? As best I can tell, you would program like an HP-80 or some other member of the family, write the program to the tape, stick it in this guy, turn him on, he'll read, load the first program on the tape, and do whatever you told it to do. So, yes?
I have no idea if this is authoritative, but I have some vague recollection that it may have been intended to hook into an HP 3000 and give you kind of a bridge between the two worlds.
May have been intended to hook into an HP 3000 and bridge the two worlds.
Yeah.
Don't think they sold a whole lot of them, though. Yes?
I also think they sold it as a kit or as a SKU combined with 3421.
What was 3421?
The
Digital
the data acquisition.
Oh,
And so they sold.
was that little dual tape drive thingy?
No, it was a thin unit that,
Data acquisition.
Data acquisition, yeah. So they sold it as a kit with that data acquisition.
And this thing, you'd suck in data from that and record it in the tape or whatever. Okay. No, that's HP for you. Yeah, I should have grabbed that one. Oh well. The only thing similar to that I've got, I forget the model number, I think it's 9875. I found it's a standalone dual tape drive for these. And it's an incredible little state machine, and it can run its own diagnostics and data recording, and you can't save programs or on it and load, but you can read and write data to it and change your tape size blocks. That'd be an interesting thing to do a talk about next year. Anyway, getting back to the 85, how do we program it? Basic. It's a dialect unique to the 80 series, although there's not that much weird in it. You know, some stuff like using an ampersand or an @ sign to delineate multiple statements in a line. It's a very nice basic. And of course, like a calculator, you turn it on, it's ready to go instantly. I had a nephew a couple of years ago that wanted to learn programming. And so his family, being moderately well-to-do, thought, oh, we'll just get him a MacBook Air. And I was like, no, don't do that. You know, if you're programming a modern laptop, you need to have an IDE, or either that or they learn one of these silly scripting languages like Python, which of course we all sneer at. But something like this, you turn it on, bang, you're ready to go, you can type in statements, there's no compiler, no editor, no IDE, you can just get right down to the programming. I love it. And it has trace, it has step, you can turn on tracing, vector stuff to the printer. It's just wonderful. There is an assembler ROM. I found the documentation this morning. Yes, I did. I've got the assembler ROM actually. Yeah. And I found there's that Australian site, HP Computer Museum, and I found they said, oh, I bet they've got it, and yes, they did. Looking through the assembler ROM manual, I can tell you that the processor architecture is really, really unlike anything you've ever seen. And if I had more time, I would have given you a couple of pages on it, but I don't. Yes?
Quick comment, it's the same processor architecture that was used in HP-75, although they re-implemented it in CMOS for that, but exactly the same architecture.
Everybody hear that? It's the same architecture as the HP-75, one of which we have up here in the agreement table, but re-implemented in CMOS. Yeah, I remember seeing things very quickly like 77 registers. Okay, that makes sense.
That's
Yeah.
octal, so it's 64.
Octal.
Do you have program packs for this?
I do have a couple of program packs for this from Larry
With
Atherton.
with the binder, manuals? and-
Oh, yeah, I've printed out some of them. You could go to that Australian hpmuseum.com, I think. It's not the Dave Hicks site, it's the other site.
Well, let me know if you want to expand, because I have a bunch of that stuff.
I'm gonna talk to this guy. Yeah.
Let me give a plug again, like David just did, for that Australian HP museum. That's a very underutilized, perhaps not as well-known place. He's got a ton of stuff.
Basically, he has documentation. You can go look up your thing. In fact, I can demonstrate this after the show, because I finally got online. You could go to any computer and there's a link at the bottom that says documentation, and he's got a ton of stuff. It's very nice. Entering and editing programs, as I mentioned, is easy. You can move the cursor around, do full screen based editing, and it's ready to go instantly. So how fast is it? Not very. I don't know the reasons. Well, 0.625 megahertz is not very fast. The fact that they multiplex everything over those 8 pins is probably going to slow it down quite a bit. Does save copper, yeah. I don't know if this really doesn't strike me as something, that's a cost-reduced item, but who knows. And one thing that probably makes it a lot slower is one thing we will all appreciate. All the math is BCD. Oh, yes, everybody's impressed. That's good. Now, normally what I would have done is I would have written some little simple program, and then I would have run it in a bunch of different machines like I did for the SR60 presentation a couple years ago, and then we could get an idea of where it fits, but I didn't have time to do that. So, I've got this little program. This is my go-to HP benchmark, and I run it in all my calculators. It's called threes, and what it does is it finds all 3-digit numbers equal to the sums of the cubes of their digits. And what I do is I set up a 10-element array. Each element of the array has the cube of the ordinality of that array. So 0 cubed is 0, 1 cubed is 1, 2 cubed is 8, 3 cubed is 9, so on and so forth. And then I set up 3 nested loops. Hundreds go 1 to 9, tens go 0 to 9, ones go 0 to 9. And inside that nested loop, I pick out the 3 elements of the array equal to my hundreds, tens, and ones, and I add them and I see if they equal the number. How long did it take the HP-85 to run through the numbers 100 to 999 and find? That's how long it takes. 11.767 seconds. Well, what else can I compare this with? I know from running it on an Apple II and Integer Basic that it's much, much faster. I remember going, wow, that's not even in the same ballpark. I don't remember how much faster. I would guess it's probably in the order of 2 or 3 seconds. Just a guess. But I did have this guy here. Oh, he doesn't have basic. So you go out to the internet, you find a basic you can download and run. So I found something called Chipmunk Basic. I have no idea anything about it, if it's optimized, if it works, whatever. I ran the program in Chipmunk Basic. Yeah, it's a little bit faster. Actually, it's not as much faster as I thought it would be. It's only 706 times faster.
You gotta run it on a prime.
I ran it on my HP-41CL in Turbo 50 mode, and it took 21 seconds. So 21 seconds on a 41CL, 11.7 seconds on the 85, and 100th of a second, 200ths of a second, roughly. So, it's not super fast, obviously, but you can still do quite a bit of stuff with it, just because it is so easy and accessible. And, here's one thing. Are all the HP guys gone? Is Cyril and all those guys, Tim Westman, everybody gone? Okay, you know what I really hate about computers like the Prime? Does it come with a manual that tells me how to program it, or that even explains the programming language? Is that documentation even available at all?
It's coming.
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
Seriously.
Yeah, that's what they told us about the
Not
39
even
GT.
breathing hard though.
Yeah. Whereas,
Something else.
where? Oh, damn. Okay. Where's my giant manual for this? Is that back in the table,
We
Mary?
know the 50G one too.
Oh, here we go.
The 50G advanced.
That's true. For the 85, you got this gigantic, thick programming manual, and it's not spiral bound, which shows that HP was already headed down the wrong path. But it is punched for a 3-hole binder, and it is stuffed full of examples and illustrations. It is just wonderful.
Trees were more colorful back then.
Yes.
You have the advanced users, for the 85, that was
I'm sorry, what?
the advanced users guide.
I have a whole bunch of documentation at home up in a shelf, and I'm afraid I couldn't tell you which ones I have right off the top of my head.
So that's the name of the
Yeah.
Okay.
If I don't have it, I can probably grab it off the Australian site.
Advanced programming is just as big.
Well, they're different manuals. For example, in here in the ROMs, I've got the advanced programming ROM.
Yeah.
Focus in here.
Well, it's just back then we sold to boring old engineers who had nothing better to do than sit and read books.
You are exactly correct. I would stay up late at night. This is before I was married. I would stay up late at night playing with crap like this. Yeah, they've got the advanced programming ROM, the matrix ROM, and those all came with their own thick, giant manuals. So, you've all said, gee, this is cool, I want one. And who could blame you? You'll recall that at the beginning of the talk, I said I was a little surprised that, I'm really proud of my collection of really old, hard to find, obscure calculators. I mean, how many of you have 9110s, huh? How many? Okay, a couple of three of you guys, but these things are widely available. In fact, I looked on eBay this morning and there are 9 of them. And the prices vary widely, as you can see. $12.95 will get you one just like this one. And Larry Atherton gets these things, he takes them apart, he washes all the PC boards in alcohol or some solvent, he repaints it with epoxy paint, he rebuilds the keyboard. The keyboards in these things, it's kind of odd. There's a hollow square stem coming up, and then the keyboard fits into that. And the square stems are very thin, and they tend to crack along the corners, and that makes the key harder and harder to press till it kind of locks up. And he basically rebuilds all those with some miracle technique that I've sworn never to divulge, so I can't. The tape drive is rebuilt. He puts new CRTs in most of them. This one has a new CRT. It's apparently an industrial part you can still get.
Really?
Unlike, say, the electrostatic deflection CRT in a 9100. So for $12.95, you get a machine that is in better condition, literally, than when HP gave it to you. And it comes with some tapes and manuals and DVD. It's really nice if you have lots of money. If you don't have lots of money, you can get one for $149. And the nice thing is, these things are extremely reliable. Most of them work just fine, except for the printer and tape drive. The tape drive will have the GUI wheel problems. And even if you fix it, it's the DC-100 tape problem. The printer, I don't know how many of you saw when the top was off, it has these, in this case, bright orange tooth belts that move the head back and forth and a stepper motor to advance paper. Those belts disintegrate. Believe it or not, they're also a standard industrial part that you can still get.
It's a thermal printer, right?
It is a thermal printer, right. If the thermal, now, something else. The paper it uses, I forget the measurements, but it is not a standard width. No, it's not.
What's the HP part?
Well, again, Larry Atherton had somebody make the paper, and they come in like 300-yard rolls for $17. You can get the paper from him. He's the only source that I know of. Let's see, that's actually the last slide I've got. That's as far as I got. Sorry. But, if I get out of this, and because I didn't have much time. Remember how late we were here yesterday? So, here's eBay.
Yeah.
And this was a search I did just a minute ago. HP-85s are widely available. And then here's one with a plotter. That's kind of tempting. Here's Larry selling his thermal paper. Here's the standard pack manual, which I was going to order, but I think I'll talk to this guy first. And then, since we mentioned it, yes, I have a bookmark specifically for calculators. Go to the HP Computer Museum in Australia, technical desktops, 80 series, 85, product documentation, here are all the manuals he's got. And these are all PDFs, you can download them. The only complaint I have is he has not run them through OCR, so they are not searchable PDFs. However, if you have Acrobat Pro, you can do that yourself. And category accessories, and this is why I didn't see the assembler ROM before. He doesn't have it there. You have to go to category accessory assembly ROM, then product documentation, and there's the assembler manual with the processor architecture and all that other fun stuff in it. So that's about all I've got. So any questions, or can we, oh, look at the time, this is perfect, or, oh, damn, there's a question, yeah.
Do you know www.series80.org? I think they got tons of manuals.
Sirius, how do you spell that?
Series.
Like the word Sirius? Series 80.
Sirius 80.
I might already have that. And that's what makes collecting these fun. If you actually, you know, like a 9100, it works. You might play with it a little bit, but you're just going to put it in the shelf and dust it every now and then. And these are more fun to actually play with. Yes?
There's also a module that someone has designed to allow you to put a standard ROM onto the board. If you don't have the plug-in ROMs that you have, you can burn a copy of an old ROM onto a standard ROM, put it on this card that'll plug into the back of that unit. It's called the PRM-85.
PRM-85. PRM-85?
I think so, yeah. And that Series 80 will have some information on that.
Google might get this website.
So it takes
It takes standard EEPROM.
Like that? I love the internet. Yes?
I would like to ask Richard, didn't we originally use one of those for all of our financial accounting?
Absolutely, we did, yep. And the problem we had was that we wore out the hard drives, and I had to replace the guts of the hard drives.
Hard drives?
Yeah.
Of this guy?
External, yeah.
You could put an
Floppy drives, maybe?
You could put an HP-80 hard drive on it.
Oh,
I think it was.
I guess you could.
I wasn't,
Yeah, you
maybe
get
it was
that
a
storage
floppy.
ROM.
Say what?
The mass storage ROM will allow it to talk to the HPID hard drives.
Huh. That's something I should get.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Oh,
there were
different
protocols.
protocols.
Yeah, there was
Amigo,
protocols.
CS80,
Yeah.
and one other.
Yes.
A lot of uses for those are for labs.
Yeah.
You can hook up a bunch of HPID instrumentation, and that HP Basic was very easy to gather information from all the various HP instruments at that time.
I remember that, yeah, that continues on with like what the 9825 did. When I joined a company called CARE in Los Gatos, CAERE. We made the OmniPage OCR. And we also had a little hand scanner at the time called OmniScan. And I joined them in like 1992, and they were using 9825s in the back to run their industrial process.
Right, but with that, you'd have the screens that you put your temporary plots up there, HID flyer, make very nice graphs.
Yeah, I noticed in my eBay thing back there that somebody was selling a machine with a plotter for not very much money. And maybe, well, Mary is not paying attention. Good, let's just get it. Yes?
That website before that you were looking at?
Which website before I'm looking at?
Yes,
This guy?
That one.
Yes.
If you're, I don't know if anyone mentioned this, and it might be a little bit hidden, but speaking of being able to do the EEPROMs, I believe he has ROM images for most of the modules.
Ah.
So if you can get the EEPROM going, go to his site to get the images, you've got it.
All I need to do is get one of those little boards.
And a burner.
And a, oh, well, I used to have one. Yeah, you can probably still get them. Maybe they have one that connects to USB and a Mac. Okay, can we go to lunch now? Are we finished? Nobody else? Say what?
Lunch is not here yet.
It's noon.
Arriving around there.
Arriving around it, well, it's noon.